too. I'm going to start recording. Bye, team.
Bye.
All right.
Exciting
Well, yeah. Thank you, Baileigh, for doing this. This is
Yeah.
exciting.
I'm here.
I'm super excited because I am at a library in Cumberland, which is way down from you, way away from you, but we're just starting our library of things,
Oh, amazing.
anyway, we have big dreams, but
Yeah, well, that's
big dreams,
good.
but
That's good.
so I think that this is a great learning experience because we're a very active land trust, and we're curious about kayaks and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
all those things are like, they're kind of scary, right?
Yeah,
To
they can
loan
be
out.
scary. Totally.
So I think of you as a pioneer, and I hope that you can inform us about all that you're doing. My motto is you make mistakes so that I don't have to. So
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Somebody's got to do it, right?
yeah. So we would love to hear, all of everything that you have to share with us, and especially all of the mistakes that you make. So
Okay, great. Yeah, I had talked to the director here, Diana. You guys probably know Diana. And because she can speak a little bit more to like the backstory of things. So I spoke with her and got some notes from Diana. But she did say if there was any questions that anybody had that I could not answer from like the library perspective of things, I do have her email at the end.
great.
Because she has more of like the library based knowledge than I do. So but yeah, her email is at the end, and she said she is more than happy to take some questions after the fact. She was going to try to be here, but she had the same thing. She said that something came up and she wasn't able to make it. But she can answer any other questions that I might not be able to answer. So
Excellent.
I'm excited.
All right. So take it away.
Are we ready? Is this good?
We're ready. We are ready. Yes.
Okay, cool.
We're small, but we're interested.
What's that?
Right.
We're small, but we're interested.
Small, but
Perfect.
invested.
I'll take it. It's a great group to do this with because it was some information I needed to all put together anyway, and I hadn't done it yet. Nobody had done it, so this was a great reason for me to put this information together. So I'm going to share my screen. Sometimes it takes me a minute to share my screen, but I will do it. Oh no. Oh no.
Do you need sharing? Hold on.
Oh, I think I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
All right. Can you guys see?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we have the Katahdin Gear Library, a community gear library where access to gear, supportive spaces, and the resources for lifelong learning can be found. So as you guys know, we are here at the Gear Library, we primarily deal with outdoor recreation gear. So I know a lot of people in this group sometimes have different things that they're renting out, hence the name Library of Things. But this is primarily focused on outdoor recreation gear, but a lot of the things that can come from this meeting, I hope that you guys can take away for whatever you guys decide to rent out. So we have a little bit of history about the Katahdin Gear Library. We were co-founded in 2018 by the Millinocket Memorial Library and Outdoor Sport Institute. Both of them are 501c3 nonprofits. So we are an active branch of the Millinocket Memorial Library. So we're not our own separate nonprofit, not our own separate organization. We are a branch of the Millinocket Memorial Library, and we are co-managed and work together with Outdoor Sport Institute as well. We offer lots of different services here. So we have, of course, our gear lending library. So we'll get into a little bit more about what we rent out later on in this slide. Information. So we're located right in downtown Millinocket. We're also right next door to a bakery. So that has its own perks. So people are always coming into the bakery, or we're always getting foot traffic right downtown. So we're in a great spot to provide information. And we're also open on weekends. So we get a lot of people that come in and ask, of course, outdoor recreation related questions like, where to go for a hike or where to see a moose or whatever else. And then we also get a lot of questions just because of our location downtown about other things like, on a Monday in Millinocket, sometimes it's really hard to find a place to eat. So where do you go to eat on a Monday night in town? So we are right downtown and able to share that information with people. We do a ton of programs. We do offer community and youth programs. Again, we'll have some more information on that later down the road. But our community programs are primarily led by volunteers. So people come in and say, hey, I want to do this thing. I want to promote it as a gear library program. Like, how can we make this happen? So that we have some process in there that we're still working on refining. But right now that's kind of where we're at. And then youth outdoor programming, we have a ton of, and we'll talk more about that later. And then lastly, we have our bike repair shop. So we work on our own fleet of mountain bikes that we have. We also work on bikes from the community, so people can drop off their own bikes to be tuned up for a small fee. And we also work on other organizations and businesses bikes. So if there's another business in the area that offer like bike rentals, but they don't have the skills or the tools or knowledge to work on those bikes, we contract our services out for that for a fee. And so we work on their bikes as well. Right now we have about 230 active using patrons of the Katahdin Gear Library. Of those 230, 184 of those patrons qualify for a free membership. So again, we'll get into a little bit more detail about our free membership, I think in the next slide or two, but so it's a really overwhelming amount that use our services locally, which is really cool to see. And then you'll see here in 2023, we rented out over 500 pieces of gear and helped support 66 youth and community programs with a total of over 600 participants. So something that I've learned, something that we've all learned, I think, in the past few years is that it's not always about the specific gear that you're renting, but it's about kind of some of the other supporting things that you get to do with those gear, like programs, which is one of my favorite things. So we have a little bit of a timeline. I'll breeze through this kind of quick. 2016, Millinocket Memorial Library had lost 90% of its town funding, which was devastating. They weren't able to operate, of course, at that amount. Some volunteers came together and said, we would rather do this together, volunteering, rather than not having a library at all. So these group of people came together and they reincorporated as a nonprofit, which still exists today, and brought the library back to life, which was incredible. 2017, they hired their first official staff member. 2018, MML, Millinocket Memorial Library, participates in the Katahdin Gazetteer. And all that is that it was a group of people who came together to kind of reinvent our region. So after Millinocket kind of fell with the economy, after the mills collapsed, or after the mills stopped getting used, we kind of had to rebrand what we were thinking about here in our region. So the Katahdin Gazetteer was just a group of people and individuals who came together to kind of rethink the region and, kind of what's next. So in that process, we learned a few things about what our community needs, built a lot of relationships, and we kind of had the opportunity to re-envision what a library is, what it can do, and who it can serve. So that was a really great opportunity for that. And from that project came the Katahdin Gear Library, and that was in 2018 that we officially began that process. So in 2019, the Gear Library officially acquired the gear from Outdoor Sport Institute. So back in 2018, when they first opened the Gear Library, they had kind of been borrowing this gear from OSI, just as like a trial and error kind of thing, just to see if it worked, if it was something that we wanted to pursue. Decided that it was something we wanted to continue on. In 2019, we officially made that happen and officially got the gear from them. And OSI, for anybody who doesn't know, Outdoor Sport Institute, they are a local nonprofit at the time. It was a traveling gear library, essentially. So they had this whole fleet of gear and they rented gear to people all over the state. And so they would travel from all regions, all places, renting out gear. They decided it wasn't quite financially responsible, or just, it was a really tough thing to do, is to rent gear statewide. So they decided that wasn't really what they wanted to do, and they wanted to put more of their focus into local, regional gear access. So it came at a really good time for both organizations. 2020 was, of course, COVID. At this time prior, the library had been undergoing some renovations. 2020, the library renovations had been completed. The gear library, which had been in 2 or 3 other locations prior, moves back into the library and into the basement. And in 2021, the OSI interns established the first business plan for KGL. And you'll see here in these photos that the one on the left is where the gear library first started, which was in a very back corner of the Millinocket Memorial Library, and they just had skis and snowshoes. So it was just an unused part of the library, and they just like stuffed a whole bunch of gear back there, and that was where it first started. And then when the library underwent renovations, it got moved to this building of this photo on the right, which was a previous restaurant, operated out of there for a while, and then moved back into the library. So in 2022, we moved into our current space where we are located in downtown Millinocket. We moved in there in April, I believe, and then hired our first full-time staff in December, which was myself, a full-time general manager of the Gear Library. And then in 2023, we were able to start hiring some teen interns through regional workforce organizations to help staff the Gear Library. We piloted a collaborative class at the local high school. And we formed the Katahdin Region Outdoor Collective, which is kind of our catch-all youth programming entity. Then in 2024, we are continuing to build and expand our summer programs, the Katahdin Region Outdoor Collective. We are building a youth leadership program, and we are also planning beginning a updated strategic planning. So that's kind of a quick rundown of our timeline. Then we have our gear. So we rent gear year round. Spring, summer, and fall, we have canoes, kayaks, paddleboards, and mountain bikes that we rent out. In the wintertime, we have cross-country skis, skate skis, and snowshoes. And then year round, we have backpacks. And all of these things come with the gear necessary to use them. So like all of our paddle equipment comes with paddles and life jackets. And then our skis come with poles and boots. So pretty much everything we have comes with like the necessary equipment to operate the gear. Mountain bikes come with helmets. So we have some photos here of some fun ways that we get to use our gear. A lot of them are on programs, but people are obviously able to rent this gear too. I think one of our most used gear that gets rented, probably a toss up between our kayaks and our paddle boards. Those two are very, very popular. I think that's just because they're accessible, they're a little bit smaller, so they're easier to transport. Items like skis sometimes can be daunting because people who don't grow up skiing might not necessarily have the skills, might be, a little bit scary to start. So kayaks, I think, are just an easy entry level thing for people to go and use. And most people do grow up kayaking at some point in their life, so they're familiar with it. And then we have our membership model. So I kind of have a photo here of what we kind of hand out to people, what we advertise to people. There are 2 different ways to use the Katahdin Gear Library. One of them is to pay daily to rent. So a lot of those people are people who are vacationing in Millinocket. So they'll come out for a week and maybe rent a mountain bike for a day to go try the trails, or maybe they'll rent a kayak for a day because they're staying on the lake somewhere, or maybe they're taking a canoe trip and want to rent a canoe for 3 or 4 days. So those are usually the people that pay daily to rent, and you'll see we have our fees there. There's nothing that goes over $20 a day, so it's all pretty reasonable fees for most people. And then the primary way that people use the Gear Library is to become a member, and anybody can become a member. And what you get from becoming a member is that members get access to free 24 hours of gear each and every time they rent. So it's not just the first time, it's not just the first 5 times, it's every single time these people come, they get 24 hours of gear to rent every single time. So if I were to rent a piece of gear out today, I would just have to have it back by the end of the day tomorrow. So we're not super concerned about to the hour, 24 hours, but it's typically just by the end of our day the next day. So if we close at 5, so it's before 5 tomorrow. And you get generally about one piece of gear per person, or if it's a household, they can get a couple different pieces of gear for the household. And then there's also a 24-hour span between those rentals. So you get 24 hours of gear that you can rent, and then you have to have it at the gear library for like an overnight span or 24 hours before you can rent it out again. And what we do that for is just so we set the boundary and the expectation early that the gear is our gear and not necessarily somebody else's gear. Because what we've run into in the past is that people will continuously rent out the gear and it never really comes back to us, and it just stays at their house the whole time instead of being accessible for others to use. It's not necessarily that people are knocking down our door to rent all this gear. We have plenty of gear to rent. But it's more about just like setting those boundaries and expectations that it's not your personal item, it's our item, and you're borrowing it from us. So that's why we did that. But coming back to the membership, we have our membership costs here, but our primary membership is for Katahdin region residents. So Katahdin region residents consists of about 8 towns in our area. And if you are a year-round resident in any one of those 8 towns, you automatically qualify for a free membership. We did this because we want to make sure that people that live in our region are able to access the gear with no barriers, and be able to use what we have and access the amazing outdoors that we have right in our own backyard. So we didn't want to we wanted to break down any barriers that people might have to getting outside, and any financial reasons. So anybody that lives year round in our region automatically gets a free membership. And as I said, of our 230 patrons, I think it was 184 of those patrons are using under a free membership, which is amazing. So moving on to what do we wish we knew before? So this was a fun one to think about. Because you can never go back in time and fix the things. You can just learn from what you did and pass along the information to other people who are trying to do it, which I hope that you guys, you guys find this information helpful. So we have some financial things that we wish we would have known before. So as far as grants go, it's really hard to get grants for operating support. I'm sure a lot of you guys have already learned that for other roles in your libraries. But people don't necessarily want to give out grants for operating support. So trying to find funding for staffing has been, a hurdle to overcome. It's okay to have different revenue streams. It's okay to think about your nonprofit as a business. I did a whole training back in the winter time. This course was provided by one of our grantees, and there was about 7 or 8 statewide nonprofits who were invited to attend this training. And this training was just for thinking about your business trying to think about your nonprofit as a business, with an entrepreneurial mind. So trying to find different ways of revenue, totally okay. There's, parameters and things that are not allowed. But you can do things like business planning, diversifying revenue streams, as a nonprofit, and you definitely should. Like, it's a great thing to do. You don't have to just rely on grants and donations. You can provide for yourself too. And then there's a difference between free and accessible. Sliding scales are really good for this. It still gives you access to people who need the access. But also there's a lot of people out there who are willing to pay for the services that you're providing and will do so if given the chance. So just some good things to think about, free versus accessible, and it just kind of depends on your organization and what you can and want to do with that. Then of course, collaboration, it's nothing new. Collaboration is an important part of any kind of organization. We wouldn't have the Katahdin Gear Library without Millinocket Memorial Library. So something you can take from that is don't start a new nonprofit if you don't have to. There's a lot of shared resources you can get from collaborating with another or starting another branch of your organization. So we are allowed to, access some of their resources and get some additional help, being a part of the Millinocket Memorial Library that we would not get or not be able to have on our own. Some systems and policies are, a lot of our systems and policies are shared between Millinocket Memorial Library and the Katahdin Gear Library. Because it's, you know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Like if something works, you can keep it and use it for the same thing. And we are a branch, so that's totally fine to share systems and policies. And certain expenses as well. Insurances is another great one to work on. Program insurance can sometimes be, you know, a confusing thing, but yeah, another great thing. And then partnerships, of course, allow you to do things that not one organization can do on our own. We all know this, but collaboration is key. And then the last one here, start small, fail smart, fail fast, and frame things as an experiment. And this, like, last part is probably my favorite part about this because, you know, everything is an experiment. Nothing has to be set in stone. You try something, see if it works, and then you learn from it. There's a lot of things that we've done that hasn't worked, but you know, you tweak things, you change things, and make it your own, or make it something that does work for next time. So it's okay to try new ideas and try new things, and just to frame it as an experiment. All right, then we have some challenges here. So we have, of course, a staffing. And this kind of presented in two different ways when I started thinking about it. Some challenges in the past that we've had with staffing that, you know, might be more interesting to you guys would be that the Gear Library was originally staffed by library staff. You know, the Gear Library used to be at this location, at the same, all in the same building. So it'd be staffed by library staff. And that didn't quite work out because, you know, some of these people did not sign up to be hauling mountain bikes up and down the stairs every day when people rented them. And that's okay. And it might not just be that, you know, you're not interested in those kind of types of things. If you can't answer questions because, you know, maybe you don't go out mountain biking, and that's totally okay. It's not everybody's thing. But it just was not working for us at that time. So we had to find kind of a different way to do it. And, you know, our staff here was amazing. They did great with it. But I'm sure that a lot of them are glad that they don't have to do it anymore. So, and then present challenge for staffing is just, again, funding. You know, grants don't want to pay for operating. So just finding some funding for staffing now and keeping those doors open, have been difficult, but we've been really finding some new ways to do that, which has been great. Finding the sweet spot for our membership model. I mean, not everything that works for us is going to work for everybody else. So you have to find what works for your community. I would suggest finding out what your community wants, how they want it, you know, what kind of the financial aspect of things look like. And again, what works for us isn't going to work for everybody all the time. And we're still learning this. We're still learning about what works best for us. So this is like an ever-changing thing. I mean, we come back to this conversation probably at least once a year, if not more, about kind of our membership model and is this working and if we should change it or not. And then communicating programs with others. This has been one, because there's, you know, I'm sure you guys see this a lot too, is, you know, there's been some great programs operated by some really great volunteers that maybe, you know, don't get any turnout or get like 1 or 2 people or 3 or 4 people. So just trying to find a way, because, you know, of course, different programs catch the eye of different people. So it's like, where do you go to advertise this stuff? You know, is it social media? Is it flyers at the grocery store? Like what's the best way of communicating these things to people? And with that, you know, don't be discouraged by small numbers. An example of this would be the Katahdin Region Outdoor Collective, like youth programs. Our very first program that we did last summer, we had 2 kids sign up for it. We had an open spot for up to 12 kids to sign up, and we had 2 kids sign up. It was kind of a bummer for us, but we had a great time with those 2 kids. One of them continued to come back for the whole summer, still coming back now. We see him all the time. And fast forward to now, we have our 2024 summer programs. The registrations are already completely full. They filled up under a month. So it's just, good things take time. And good things will come. And then how to lend out gear. When the gear library first started at Millinocket Memorial Library, it had the way that gear was rented out was by the interlibrary loan system using barcodes, so the same way you'd get a book. And this proved difficult for a few different reasons. It worked for the time, but it was time to adjust when things changed. But it was difficult because it was hard to catalog. It was hard to manage requesting. So, taking reservations, people would come in and see that, there's a kayak available. Why can't I take the kayak? Oh, well, it's reserved. Like you can't, just managing requests and reservations, that was really hard. If people didn't show up to pick up what they requested, which happens frequently, that proved to be a challenge. And then everybody had to become a library card holder, which at the time seemed like a really good idea, but it just ended up being more paperwork than everybody needed. So we no longer require people to be a card holder. The only requirement is for membership is to be a year-round resident. But even if you're not a year-round resident, you can pay for a membership or do your daily fee. We also do not take reservations anymore. We learned that just wasn't working for us. Because again, people would make a reservation, we'd set that gear aside, get it all prepped and ready, and people, might not show up for whatever reason. Maybe it's personal reasons, maybe it's the weather's bad that day and they don't want to go out and go kayaking, which is fine. But we found for us, it works better. First come, first serve. We do offer a reservation system for other organizations. But as far as individuals, we do not offer that. And then the interlibrary loan system does not integrate well with a POS system. So as far as taking payments and taking money, that was just proved to be pretty difficult. So we no longer do that anymore. All right, and some successes. Some successes that have come out of this have been, of course, the Katahdin Region Outdoor Collective, known as KROC, our acronym. I do have a slide after this talking more about that, so we'll, go into that. Pipeline of teen learning. This is also kind of a KROC-based byproduct, but pipeline of teen learning into outdoor recreation, hobbies, and potentially jobs. So we work with kids through KROC from grade school all the way up until seniors. We have programs and opportunities for these kids their entire way through schooling. So we have this really awesome pipeline of kids being able to, kind of find their niche and find where they want to be. Last year, or this past school year, we piloted our first year of teaching bike mechanics to high school students. So we partnered with our local high school here in Millinocket, and we had a whole semester of learning. So the first semester, or sorry, a whole year of learning. The first semester was trail building. So they partnered with another local organization called Katahdin Trails, and there's a whole trail system located out back behind their school. So they would go out for the day and learn different things about trail building on the trails, like outside, right behind their school. And then the second semester, they came to us at the gear library, and we are walking distance from the school to the gear library. So they would come over, they would each be in pairs or groups. They'd all have a bike to work on, and we'd go through specific skills of bike repair and bike maintenance every single day they came to class. We had different types of check-ins and tests and ways to kind of, measure their knowledge. And it turns out a lot of them did actually remember quite a bit from it. So I was super happy with that. So we are planning on doing this again for a second year, with some minor tweaks and changes, but we'll be doing it again this year, which is super exciting. And then, of course, a success is just providing the space for folks to come and ask questions and get the help that they need. Again, this is one of my favorite things about the Gear Library, is being able to get folks into the outdoors. I mean, the outdoors, again, can be like a very daunting, scary place to be if you're not familiar with it. And having the space to go to ask those questions and get the help you need, whether it's, what trail should I go hike today? Or, I really want to get into this sport. How should I do this? What do I do? Or being able to provide like a program. Last year we did a couple intro to mountain bike clinics. So we did a women's only, and then we did a general all public one. So people who had no previous skills in these sports were able to come and learn. So just providing that safe space for folks to come and ask questions to get outdoors. Because we want the outdoors, again, to be accessible by everybody. And then lastly, we have the Katahdin Region Outdoor Collective, which I have been referring to this whole presentation. So I'm glad that we finally get to talk about it. This has been such a fun thing to be a part of. And I know it's kind of long, but I'm just going to read through this little thing here because I felt like it was important to leave the whole description up. Katahdin Region Outdoor Collective is a dynamic group of nonprofits, individuals, businesses, and government organizations with a shared belief in the profound impact of outdoor experiences on youth well-being. Our collaborative efforts result in year-round opportunities for young individuals to foster a deep connection to nature, cultivate leadership skills, and become future land stewards. So I know you guys are more, focused on the renting part of the items. But I felt like this was a really important piece to add in there because, one of the things that we have learned is that renting the thing is super important so people can have those things to get outside and do it. But being able to show them how to do it, especially at a younger age, coming all the way up through has been so amazing. It's been so great. And giving these kids a place to go after school or during the summer has proved to be just amazing in our community. It brings them back into our community. We recently, just this past weekend, we had a canoe race that happened in our town. And we put it out there to some kids, and we said, hey, if you come and volunteer at this event, we'll take you and go, whitewater paddling the next day. And so we got 2 kids who did. They spent so they are still in school, went to school all week long, came and volunteered on Saturday, and then we actually ended up paddling Saturday night and Sunday. So these kids are just sometimes looking for a place to go and things to do and people to do them with. So that was super cool to see. I could talk about this all day, but I will not unless you guys have other questions on it. But just really quickly, I wanted to talk about this image that I have on here. So last year, in the span of 1 month, we had 12 programs at 9 different locations and had 51 total participants for these Katahdin Region Outdoor Collective programs. Right now, it's looking like this year's numbers are already higher, so I'm really excited to see kind of the breakdown from this year. But as far as the Katahdin Region Outdoor Collective, it's a really, really large group of regional businesses, organizations, individuals interested in just getting kids outside. At the bottom of this graphic, you'll see some logos on the page, and those are we have a handful of organizations who are active in this, but we have a lot more that are behind the scenes doing things as well. So with that, we have some more information here. So if anybody wants to find out more about the Gear Library, we have a Facebook and an Instagram page. Those are where you're going to get your most up-to-date, accurate information on the Gear Library or on programs or anything like that. Our general online presence is at millinocketmemoriallibrary.org/gear. And then we also have a couple program-specific ones. We have /outdoor programs that will get you to most of our outdoor programs, and then KROC specific programs and information is millinocketmemoriallibrary.org/KROC. I also have my information down there with my email, as well as our library director, Diana, who was not able to be here today for this meeting, but is more than happy to answer any questions on library related things that I might not be able to speak to myself. So I think in a minute, we're probably gonna answer a couple questions, but again, if there's anything that I cannot answer, her email is here. So I'm gonna stop sharing unless there's any slides anybody wanted to go back to. But I guess I can always open it back up. So I'm gonna stop sharing for now.
Baileigh, thank you. This was fantastic.
Good.
So informative. It's funny because I was writing down questions as you were going along, and then I sort of checked them off because you answered most of them.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad about that. I know it's like so hard for me to put this stuff on a slide because I'm like, oh, I'll refer to that later, but like there's so much to talk about and like I could just go on and on.
Right,
So,
right. Just to fill people in, Hazel, who's normally here with us for these, she's our library of things guru. She would probably object to me saying that, but there it is. She wasn't able to be with us today, so she passed the baton to me. I'm happy to ask Baileigh questions, but I encourage you all to ask questions because this is the opportunity, right, to find out all about it. So, and I don't know if you saw my chat, but there is a massive storm outside my window. It's very dark.
oh my goodness.
So I may disappear at any moment, but anyway, here we are. Does anybody have any questions for Baileigh? Or should I just plunge ahead with?
No, that was so informative. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. I'm so glad. I mean, if there's anything you feel like I might have missed, I'm happy to talk about that, but I'm so glad that it was helpful for you.
I'm curious, I'm noting that you don't have things like tents and sleeping bags and that kind of outdoor gear. I'm assuming that's a conscious decision, or is it not? And it's just, maybe that's in the future.
Yeah, so it is a conscious decision. We've decided, a lot of those soft goods require a lot more maintenance and care than the hard goods do. Washing machine and cleaning and disinfecting, stuff like that we just don't have the capacity or space or resources to do. That being said, we do have a small cache of things like that we do use for programming. So we set that aside for like our K-Rock programming. So we have a lot of overnight trips that we do. We have, tents and stuff for that. Anything that we don't have for programming, we're able to outsource out from other organizations. But as far as renting out from the gear library, it's just not in the cards right now for us to do. And we're also really limited on space. I didn't mention this, but we are a super, super small space. I don't know the square footage or anything, I probably should, but it's a really small building, and then we have access to like our bikes downstairs. And we share this space out from with two other businesses that are in our building. So yeah, space wise is an issue too. And did you see a question pop up? Let me pull it up.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Andrew. Thank you for asking.
Andrew asked, any pushback from businesses that rent outdoor gear? That's a great question. So right now we are one of the very few in Millinocket that rent outdoor gear. The only other places that do, there's a couple like guiding businesses that rent out like canoes or something, but that's pretty much the extent of it. And then there's one other business that's down the road from us that just last year, I think, started renting like hiking related equipment. So we have some similar things. Like I think they have backpacks, we have backpacks. But for the most part, it's like a completely different set of goods than what we have. So there's really not a whole lot of crossover, which we're really fortunate for that. So that's a really good question, but unfortunately, it's something that we don't really deal with.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Sally.
Well, I did have a question. I think Hazel planted it in my head. I noticed that you have biking helmets, and how do you handle that? As far as like things.
Yeah. So the bike helmets are included in any of our bike rentals. So we don't necessarily, charge for them. They are included in. We originally, when I first started, the policy was that anybody had to under 18, over 18 had to at least take a bike helmet. Whatever you do with it after that is up to you. And then we since changed it to anybody under 18 has to take a bike helmet. Anybody over 18 has the choice of it. I try to frame it as more of a, do you want to, or not do you, but like, oh, I'll go grab you a helmet kind of thing. And then they can decline it if they want to. We do have a Lysol spray and a lice spray that we spray in them every single time after use. And they get left out upstairs before they get brought back downstairs to our storage. So we pretty much just have 2 dowels down in our basement that are hung up. Adult sizes go on the top, bottom, U sizes go at the bottom. And we just take them and we rent them like we would with the rest of our gear.
What about waivers?
Waivers, that's a good
Wait.
question. Yeah, so our waivers have a lot of the policies and procedures as the library does. Let me see if I might be able to quickly just pull it up and share my screen with you really quick.
While looking that up, let me just go ask a quick question about helmets. How are you
Yeah.
tracking expiration of helmets? Because bike helmets expire after a few years, or
Yeah, they
or are
sure
you just
do.
checking the
That's a great question. So right now we have been really limited in that aspect. If we see any visible damage to it, we, of course, like throw it out or don't use it. As far as the timeline on it, we just haven't, I think the helmets we have now are right at the end of their line. So we got them, I think we got most of them in like 2019 or 2020. I think 2019. So they're right at their end of like their 5-year line is typically where, kind of that is drawn. So it's something that has been discussed, but not something that we have dealt with just yet because, we don't really have the funds to buy a whole new fleet of helmet. So one of the grants that we have applied for this year has been to hopefully go towards a new fleet of helmets. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
I'll mention if you want help and a solution that would help with that, reach out. A lot of the things you mentioned is kind of problems. So with My Turn, we have a platform that handles reservations, maintenance, things like that. So, and we work with hundreds of public libraries, locations around the country. And I'll drop you an email as well. I don't want to, do like sort of salesy pitch, but a lot of the like sort of things you mentioned you have challenges with, including doing interlibrary loan or pickup at other branches, as well as having POS kind of all together. Feel free. I'm happy to.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you. Send me an email and I would love to get connected about that. Yeah, because bike helmets are definitely something that we need to stay on.
It's something that some of our other customers have run into because and you actually have to look at the year they were manufactured. Sometimes you'll get an older one and just from a liability point of view, and then that ties into your agreements, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you. I did find our waiver, so I'm just going to share this really quick. I do have 1,000 tabs open, so there's that. But here's our waiver. So up top, you'll notice that we have like the regular waiver and release of liability, all of like the legal jargon, all of the, fancy words. So all of that is located right up here in this top part. And I'm happy, to send this to, Hazel and have you guys have her disperse it if you guys want to look at it more. But we have a section on lost, stolen, and damaged gear. So this section is just talking about, we have the depreciated cost of all of our gear here. So it is the depreciated cost. It's not the brand new cost. So people do not return their gear, or if it's lost or stolen, these are the fees that they're liable to charge. At this point, we do not take any deposits or anything like that. We don't take credit cards or collateral of any kind. So right now, luckily, it's not really been a whole lot that we've had to deal with. In the year and a half I've been with the gear library, we've had one bike that was not brought back and has not been brought back. And that was kind of not typical. We just, like I said, that we just don't deal with that a whole lot, fortunately. So we have had the conversation about, maybe switching over systems or integrating systems so we can not necessarily be taking cards for a deposit, but maybe just as they're swiping their card, maybe the information just saves in there. So in case there was an issue, then that would already be there. So it's been a very recent conversation that we've been having, but nothing that we do currently. So we have our costs here for everything. You'll notice in here, we do have a telescope. We don't rent it. We don't really rent it out. We don't really advertise that we rent it out. We save it more for programs, but people can rent it. It's a very nice telescope. And then if we scroll down, We have a note in here that says, we follow all library policies and procedures because we are, again, part of the library. This is again where it comes to about, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you are gonna branch out with your library and start a program like this, then you might as well use the policies and procedures that you already have while it applies. I mean, we are in Gear Library opened in 2018 and we're still using a lot of the same policies and procedures. So it's super helpful to not have to recreate the wheel here. Gear return and overdue gear and refund policy. This just talks about, returning your gear when you agree upon, at the agreed upon time, at the Gear Library to our staff. There's been several times because our boats get stored on trailers in the back of the building. So there's been a couple times that people have maybe, didn't return their canoe by 5 o'clock when we close, but they return it at 6 o'clock and they come back the next day and they say, oh, I just loaded it on the trailer. It's just been out there. And that's just not really, you have to check it in with a staff member when we're open. So that's the only reason that we added that in here. So just saying that you're gonna return it to a staff member when we're open to our store. And that we can, check it in when you bring it back. Refund policy here is just talking about how, we take anything that requires money, we do our best to take money up front. But of course, systems like Square, they take a fee for that. So we can't always refund 100% of the fees that need to go back to them. So we do take a little bit of money to cover those fees. Gear transportation, this is a big one. We do not transport any gear at the Gear Library. So people are responsible for transporting their own gear. They're responsible for bringing ropes or straps that they need for this gear or racks. They are responsible for bringing enough manpower to help, lift a canoe onto a trailer need be. They're responsible for all that. That doesn't mean that I don't help people, load equipment when necessary. But I do tell myself and my staff that we are not to do any tie downs. No tie downs, no straps, nothing like that. You can help load if you are willing and able to, but you don't have to because it is here in the waiver that they should be bringing all the help they need to load boats. But it is something that I typically myself tend to do, but I leave that up to my staff to decide. And then we just have our regular waiver information. All of this stuff gets put into our POS. We try to track what age group that they are in. And then if they're a household membership, all the names in their household here. And then we do enter in minors with their own account, and then we just have the parent underneath that. Because it's kind of fun to track. They not only it's not only helpful to keep their sizes that they might use, so you don't have to, rip off a toddler's shoe every single time they want to rent a ski boot, and we can just see it in there already, but also to kind of keep track and see their growth and see, maybe they're 3 sizes up from last year, stuff like that. And that is our waiver. So I'm going to stop sharing. Did that answer your question?
It did, yeah. So do you make that waiver form accessible to people prior to them arriving at your doorstep, or are you just giving it to them right when they arrive?
We actually don't. We do everything right at the door when people come in. There is a way with our POS system to attach it to there and have people do it beforehand, but we just haven't done that. And then, we would have to print it, or they would have to sign it online or print it. And it's just been a whole thing. So it's something that, is accessible with our POS system. And it could be accessible via email. If somebody asks, they're like, hey, if we, we know we're coming in here at this time, can we just sign the waiver now and be done with it? So I do recommend that for if I know that there's a family coming in and they're all going to be renting kayaks or bikes or whatever. It does take a while to sign everybody's waivers, especially if you have parents and kids and everything else. So that would be a great idea, especially if you have a large group coming in, just to kind of cut down on time.
What about e-bikes? Do you do e-bikes?
We work on e-bikes as long as it's a bike mechanic related thing and not a battery related problem. But as far as renting, we do not rent e-bikes. We get a lot of questions about it though, but not something that we rent at this time. a lot of the premise of, I didn't talk a whole lot about Outdoor Sport Institute, but a lot of their premise and a lot of, the premise of a lot of the organizations that we work with is non-motorized sports, which I recognize that e-bikes don't necessarily, they're not a motorized vehicle like an ATV would be. And e-bikes are great. Personally, I love e-bikes. I don't have one, but I've ridden them a few times. I think they're so much fun. But not likely that it would be anything that we would have.
Let's see, I'm perusing my my list of questions that I checked off as you wrote. Oh yeah, so I'm curious. So if you can go back to your connection with Millinocket Memorial Library, so I'm a little bit unclear. So are items actually in the MML catalog, or are you completely kind of separate, but there's a partnership going on?
Yeah, at this point, we're completely separate. We started out under the same system. We used the interlibrary loan. We were in the same building, operated by the same staff. But since then, we have branched out. We have our space that is our space located in downtown Millinocket, which is just a couple blocks over from our branch of the library. And it is a completely different system. We have a different rental system that we use. Again, a lot of the policies and procedures are the same. But for a lot of people don't even recognize that we're part of the library. And, we try to make that more and more known by people that we're here because of the library. But everything's just so different that a lot of people, don't recognize that just yet.
Great. Let's see. I think that's all the questions I have. Does anybody else have any questions? This was excellent. It was super informative. We are about to receive some e-bikes that we are going to be loaning out, and we're doing it in collaboration with Bike Coalition of Maine.
Oh,
And we're sort of beta testing we and a few other libraries are beta testing the system. So I'm very interested in this whole loaning out gear.
That's amazing. That's so exciting. E-bikes are so much fun, and they make riding a bike more accessible for people who can't ride a regular bike.
Yes.
So there is definitely a place for e-bikes out there, and I'm excited to kind of watch that grow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
they're
exciting.
also great in hilly areas where,
Yes.
as you said, where it's not as accessible. For people.
Yeah, for people who can ride a bike.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Like me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's so great. Yeah, that'll be so much fun. I'm excited to kind of hear how that turns out for you. And if you have any other questions along the way, your process of this e-bike endeavor.
Yeah, I would be very interested in now there's been a waiver form that's been put together. So it's a partnership with Bike Coalition of Maine and the Department of Transportation. And they put together a waiver form, but I have to say that just in looking at your waiver form looks excellent and very thorough. And I think ours is too, but I like the way yours is laid out, very sort of. So anyway, I would be very interested if you were willing to share a copy of that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you send me an email or let me know your email, or I can just send it to Hazel and have her send it out. And I don't know if there's like a follow-up email that gets sent out, but I'll make sure it gets to you at some point.
Great. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. Well, we are right on schedule, I think. If there are no more questions for Baileigh, speak now or forever hold your peace. I think I will say thank you to Baileigh, and we'll call it a wrap.
Cool. Yeah, thanks guys. This was
right.
really great, and I had a lot of fun. So again, if you guys have any other follow-up questions, just feel free to send me an email.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to see you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.